So let's jump in to implementing the epidemic model that we also sketched out. I didn't want to waste everybody's viewing time typing in all of this business, but I set this up the same way that the fallen brick model worked, with up here in this part of the table a set of parameters. Because this is meant to model a real system, a real epidemic that we actually know some things about, I put in values that I obtained from different sources. So the base transmission rate isn't terribly well known at this point, but there are some bounds on it. And in a report in the Lancet, they suggested that in Wuhan province in China, before travel restrictions were in place, this varied from a high of about 4.77 to a low of about 1.15 under different conditions, those being those units on this as people. So the interpretation of this value is that every infected person would result in a new number of infected individuals per day. So this is, in fact, not people. The base transmission rate is people per day. The mean infectious sick period I pulled out of a Business Insider report, and it said people tend to recover from this in about 18 days. The fraction of cases that are severe is about 20%, as reported by the CDC. Then we also had to think about the factors that matter for treatment availability and the patient outcomes when somebody does get infected. So we have to assume that people who can get treatment will have better outcomes than those that don't, and so we have to have a limit on how much treatment capacity the medical system has. So I set an arbitrary capacity of intensive care units of 5,000 people, roughly, in a city of 500,000 people. And I don't know whether those numbers are realistic, but they're at least something. But because they're assumed values, they're also tunable. So one of the things we may want to eventually investigate is if we somehow put in a bunch of field hospitals and create more ICU capacity, what is that expected to do to the outcomes? So these will wind up being research questions that we can address. There's also an assumed mortality rate for people who get treatment in an ICU, and there's a higher mortality rate for people who can't get into the medical system for one reason or another. So they don't receive treatment, and therefore their mortality rate is higher. And then I started with an initial population size of 500,000 people, and just plopped 10 infected individuals down in that. One of the other questions we could ask is, how does the number of introduced infectious cases in a population affect the spread of the disease through that? I also created a time column, just like in the brick falling one, except that instead of it being seconds, this is in days. And then we have the variables. So a susceptible population, the number of people who have not yet gotten the infection, an infected population that we can break down into subgroups. So those that have a severe case, those that have a severe case and get ICU treatment, and those that have a severe case that exceed the ICU capacity, and a recovered population and a deceased population. Most of these are going to start at 0, except for the infected population, which will be 10, and the susceptible population, which will be 500,000. Unlike in the falling brick example, I put the change columns in between. So the susceptible population is going to decrease every time by the number of new infections. So every time I put a column header with a pound sign or a number in front of it, this means that this is a delta. This is a change in the number of infected individuals. So when we were talking about the falling brick, there was a position and then a change in position. In the same way, the population is going to change by the number of people that gave me infection. So all of the space for this calculation to get done is created and explained. I'm going to pause this and come back to it and start a new recording where we actually fill in all of this. So this one simply explains the structure that we've got.